Hey guys, it's Miss Hubbard here with this week's Read Aloud. This week we're going to be reading The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. This week's objective is that by the end of the story, you will be able to synthesize information in order to determine the theme of the story. When we're thinking about the theme of the story, the kind of questions that we want to ask ourselves are, what does the author want us to think? How did the character's thinking change? And why did the character's thinking change? Really quickly, I want to go over what theme is because that's something that we haven't talked about too much in class yet. So, the theme of a story is the message or lesson that the author wants you to take away from the story. Again, there's questions that you're going to ask yourself. What did the characters learn? How did the characters grow? Some common themes that you'll see in stories are courage, honesty, love, friendship, forgiveness, loyalty, hope, equality, hard work, and teamwork. So we're going to figure out what the theme is, or really what is the lesson? What is the thing that we can learn from the story that we can apply to our everyday lives? But going back to our other questions, if we ask ourselves, what does the author want us to think? How did the character's thinking change? And why did the character's thinking change? This will help us to figure out the lesson or the theme of the story. Before we get started reading the story, there's a couple of vocabulary words that I want to go over with you. The first one is the word emperor. So the emperor is a ruler of a nation. Not all nations have an emperor. For example, we have a president. That's our ruler. In some countries, they have an emperor who is a ruler or the same thing as a president in their country. Another person that you'll find in other countries is a prime minister, who is an elected member of the government. In our country, we have the Senate, we have the House of Representatives. Pretty much the people in Congress would be the same thing as a prime minister is in other countries. The third word I want you guys to know is the word swindlers. You're going to hear this a couple of times in the story. And a swindler is a person that tricks people to take things away from them. So, for example, if you've ever been somewhere and you see a person on the street that is playing a card game, and they ask you to give them $1 or two, and you have to guess which card is the one that you chose while they switch them up or maybe put them behind their back, and then you pick the wrong one and they keep your money, that person would be a swindler because they tricked you to take something away from you. So keep that in mind as we're reading this story. The next word that you're going to hear is a weaving loom or a weaver. So a weaving loom is a machine that's used to make cloth. And on this slide, I have a picture of a weaver that shows you kind of what a weaving loom does, that it makes the cloth. And a person is responsible for working the weaving loom, and those people are called weavers. So if somebody's weaving fabric or weaving cloth, they're making cloth on a weaving loom. The next word is fool. A fool is a silly person or a person that doesn't think. Invisible is a word that I think most of you know, but invisible is something that you can't see. And then the last word is a looking glass. So a looking glass is the same thing as a mirror in this story. So again, as we read, I want you guys to synthesize the information so that we're able to determine the theme or the lesson that we want to learn in the story. What is the lesson that we can take away from this story that we can apply to our everyday lives? The three questions that I want you guys to think about is, what does the author want us to think? How did the character's thinking change? And why did the character's thinking change? So again, we're reading The Emperor's New Clothes by Hans Christian Andersen. The Emperor's New Clothes. Many years ago, there was an emperor who loved fine clothes. He did not care for hunting. He did not care for plays or operas. He was no lover of gourmet food or wine. His only ambition was always to be well dressed. He had a different coat for every hour of the day. He loved to walk about and show off his fancy outfits. One day, two strangers arrived in town. They were swindlers, but they said they were master weavers from a faraway land. So let's stop right there. The word swindlers, I said these are people that trick in cloth. Also magic the cloth. Let's stop right here. Visible that different fools. And on. What if he can't see Mr. Once welcome here a minute. If you couldn't, it's the most seconds he will be in. Then he walked up to speak. It is only a little bag of the emperor. What the emperor? I don't right there. And let's emperor. I see. Taylor to be able to, and the emperor thing, an area that as Emperor Martin was told about that how well thing was, and so I will this. Everyone could. All right. So we're going to go back to our slide where we said we were going to synthesize the information that we learned to try and figure out the theme or the lesson of the story. So, what did the author want us to think in this story? What were some of the things that the author wanted us to think? So one thing that I noticed that the author wanted us to think was that the people, the swindlers in the story, were very tricky. And they had tricked everybody into thinking that they had made a fabric that nobody could see and no one could feel. I want you to think. What's one thing that you thought that the author wanted us to think? All right, so now let's think about how did the characters' thinking change? What was the emperor thinking in the beginning? So in the beginning, the emperor thought that he was getting cloth that no one could see. He thought he was getting something special. How did his thinking change? How did he think at the end of the story? All right, and then what happened that made the character's thinking change? What happened in the story that made the emperor's thinking change? Why did he stop thinking that the cloth that he got from the swindlers was a special cloth that nobody could see? So now we're going to use this information that you guys came up with to figure out what the lesson is in the story. What lesson did the emperor learn in the story that I could apply or that you could apply to your own life? So again, when we think about the lesson, it has to be something that we could learn for ourselves. So the lesson can't be something like never buy imaginary cloth from swindlers, because it's not every day that we come in contact with swindlers that are trying to sell us imaginary cloth. So the lesson is bigger than that. What is something that if I thought about the emperor and what he went through, I could use in my life tomorrow? What's something that I could learn from him? What's something that the emperor will probably never do again because of the things that he learned in this story? I'm looking forward to seeing the answers that you guys come up with. Later on in the week, I will post the answer to this question on our Instagram page. I look forward to seeing all your answers. Bye, guys.